the Rambam, as he's wrapping up the section on the negative commandment, on the positive commandments, he, amongst the various things that he talked about, was that there's really only about 60 that the average person of the positive commandments, there's really only about 60 that would apply. Again, if somebody's a Kohen, they would possibly have a few more in the time when the Beis HaMikdash is going. If somebody is a Levi, there might be a couple more, or if Levim are around, there might be a couple more options. But then he mentioned that there's some that women are not obligated in. There are some that are contingent on circumstances that the average person wouldn't be involved in. So altogether, there are 60. He lists the 60, but he lists them as numbers, and I'm making a audible decision that we're not going to go through all the six, go through the list. I wish that somebody would have just done that on the side. It would have made it easier. But it's going to be awkward going back and forth. Although, you know what? Since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and I don't know. He says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are mitzvahs that women are not obligated in, as well as 12, 13, and 14, and 15. So you're saying mitzvahs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, plus 15 and 18. Why doesn't he just do the whole thing in order? I don't know. But anyways, so you have 1 through 15 plus 18 women are not obligated in. And then you have 32, 54, 73, 94, 143, 147, all those which women are not obligated in. So it's maybe we will just figure this out, just get this number, because this is quite a large number. That so far we had 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. He has 56 mitzvahs that women are not obligated in out of the 248. That is, let's say 60 out of, so that's almost 25%. Around 25% of the positive commandments, women are not obligated in. Wow. Behold, and then he goes on, behold, it's made clear to you that from these 60 definite commandments, There are 46 commandments that women are also obligated, and 14 of them that they're not obligated. So out of the grand total, there's 1/4 that women are not obligated. Out of the 60 that everybody is commanded in, what he means by everybody is even the average person this would apply to, 46 of them are also obligated to women. So if you had that book that I was talking about last time, which would be a book like birders who are trying to keep track of all the different birds they've seen and under what circumstance. So let's say you had a mitzvah book like that, and you were recording the fulfillment of the mitzvahs. So for women, there would be 46. For a man, there would be 60. The mnemonic for these definite commandments will be 60 are the queens from the Song of Songs. So that phrase is Shishim Hema Malchus Ushmona Pilagshin Ba'alamos Ein Mispar. There are 60 queens and 80 concubines and damsels without number. Only one is my dove, my perfect one, the only one of her mother, the delight of he who bore her. Maidens seem and acclaim her, queens and concubines praise her. So the Rambam is suggesting that this is his mnemonic to remember that there are 60 mitzvahs that would apply to every man, no matter their station. And the mnemonic for lessening of the 14 for women will be the might is gone. For Hashem will vindicate God's people and take revenge for God's servants upon seeing that their might is gone and neither bond nor free is left. Yad ve'efes atzur ve'azov. The might is gone, neither bond nor free is left. So that's Yud Daled, that's 14. Sure, there's something very deep there, but or the mnemonic of the 46 commandments of the women will be, as for you also, because of the blood of your covenant, I have sent forth your prisoners. Meaning the obligation upon them is the number badam. That is a covenant that is definitely obligatory for women, and that is what I wanted to hint regarding the number of the positive commandments. So he took some time here, and he really got like deep. This would be something to spend some time on to try to figure out what is his deep message in all this. But 60 for men, 46 for women are the mitzvahs that everyone, positive commandments that everyone would have apply to them.
Rabbi, does that mean 188 mitzvahs apply to Kohen and Levites?
No, some could be that they apply to people that are getting a divorce, or some would apply to people who sinned and need to bring a sin offering, or if they got leprosy and tzara'at. So there are all sorts of special circumstances, right? Special circumstances. When you go to special circumstances, then 25% of the positive commandments do not apply to women in all of them. And then when you get down to the ones that definitely apply to everybody, so 14, it's also about 25%. So it stays, right? So 14 out of 60 is basically 25%, which is interesting. Okay. So that Nishlamu mitzvahs aseh, so that now we have completed the positive commandments, and now we're on the negative commandments. So again, he has made his point in his introductions that he is counting particular types of mitzvah as the official representative in what is 613 total. There could be many other positive commandments or many other negative commandments, but they're a detail in like a group that is represented by one mitzvah, like we saw the mitzvahs related to court proceedings, or the mitzvahs relating to inheritance, or things like that. Once you get into the discussion of it, there's all sorts of detail, and the fulfillment of these detail would be the fulfillment of a mitzvah, but that wouldn't necessarily make the detail countable, one of the counted ones. So as we're going through this with the negative commandments, it's the same is going to apply. This might represent a bundle of mitzvahs, but it is the mitzvah that is counted. That is that he, Hashem, prohibited us from believing in a God besides him.
Rabbi, can I just ask you a question?
Yes, please do.
I'm not actually sure what it means, what the difference is between a negative commandment and a positive commandment. I mean, positive means you must do something.
And a negative commandment is you must not do something. So for instance, let's say you're not allowed to eat a pig.
Okay.
That's a negative commandment.
Yeah, understand.
Now, one of the differences would be, let's say you're looking over your day and you see that there's an opportunity to fulfill a particular type of mitzvah available that day. You may go out of your way to do that mitzvah because you see it as sort of a kind of directive from God. So let's say it's the first day of Sukkot, so you're going to want to go out of your way to sit in a man will want to go out of his way to sit in a sukkah. It'll be part of the design of his day to go out of the way to sit in a sukkah because it's a mitzvah available that day. Also, he's going to want to go out of his way to use the 4 species, his lulav and esrog, etc. So it actually becomes part of the design of his day to fulfill the mitzvah. When it comes to negative commandments, that's not going to be the design of your day. Oh, today I'm not going to eat pig, or today I'm not going. That's going to be circumstantial. Somebody, let's say, offers the guy a ham sandwich and he turns it down. Then he got it sort of circumstantially, but he's not going to design his day so that he could fulfill that mitzvah. You could say that a person is driven by the positive commandments, but you wouldn't say that a person is driven by the negative commandments. They sort of happen upon you. So that would be one large distinction between the two of them when it comes to your own life experience. you could find yourself every day. Let's say your coworkers all go to McDonald's for lunch. So you could find yourself, just based on circumstances, constantly confronted with the negative commandment of, eating meat and milk together or something. So it could actually be a big part of your life, but it's all a circumstantial kind of thing. You're not going to work looking forward to turning down a cheeseburger.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome.
Now,
Yes, Dave.
don't the rabbis, or there's a dictum or something, that there's an inherent superiority to the positive mitzvahs? Like in certain circumstances, we say that a positive mitzvah sets aside a negative mitzvah, but there does seem always something much more inherently valuable about them.
Well, why are you on earth? You're on earth to do things. You're not on earth to not do things. So somebody could say it speaks to your purpose of being here. You're here to do. In fact, I believe it's even in Rishonim. I don't remember right off the bat who says it, but there's like early commentary that suggests that's why a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment. Aseh do halos aseh. A positive commandment pushes a negative commandment. I think it even goes back to the Rishonim. Maybe not, but I think it does. That you're put on this earth to act. So yeah.
I'm wondering though, when it comes to like all the things that you can't do, the negative mitzvahs on Shabbos, whether you do pursue your day setting up Shabbos so that you don't do things. In other words, you're going out of your way to.
They're making fences.
Right, but you could say this is a problem with Shabbos, with teaching Shabbos. It's one of those things that a trap you can sort of fall into when you're teaching what the Shabbos experience is, because there are so many details that go into the context, creating the context of Shabbos, that you could think that Shabbos is all about what you can't do, and forget that those are just about creating an environment so that you could be in the way you need to be. But the problem is the negatives are definable, the positive less so. Like let's say Zohar is Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho, you should remember Shabbos to sanctify it. We have the V'chibadato from Isaiah, you should honor it. Kavod Shabbos, we have from Isaiah that you should have oneg, you should have pleasure in Shabbos. In more contemporary language, there are those who suggest it's more about being than doing, which are all interesting words, but they're not as easily defined as the stuff that you can't do. So many people, when they are studying about Shabbos, tend to be focused on what you can't do. But assuming a context where you don't have a lot of change, like let's say you're going to have a period of several months where you're going to be in the same environment each week for those several months. So in theory, once you set up the environment, you don't need to keep on thinking about it every time. So once you've designed how you are going to make your meal, now you just go about making it. You don't have to keep on going back to the design to see if the design is in concert with the laws of Shabbos. Once you've set up what is likely to be your regular schedule, the kinds of foods that you're going to be eating, after a while, you don't need to focus on those so much, you're able to now focus on experiencing Shabbos in the mode that we were meant to experience it. But again, the language is poetry. It's not to be, to commune with God. That Shabbos, there's element of Shabbos that's like the world to come, and therefore to be in a way that best allows us to use the benefit of the world to come, that there's some presence of God, Shekhinah, all these kinds of things. They're like poetry and mysticism. So, and it's just sort of funny that those don't get as much attention and mentoring. Maybe we learn by who's modeling it, for us. But we don't you don't have the same kind of learning opportunity that you do with the negative commandments. It's almost like a distraction, like with a misdirection, as the magicians build so much of what they do on misdirection. And misdirection, oftentimes with spiritual things, is there in spades. So in the end, it's not so surprising. You have something as holy as Shabbos. It makes sense that there'd be a lot of misdirection. But that is the misdirection, is spending so much time on what you can't do and starting to think that Shabbos is all about what you can't do. And certainly there are kids that end up growing up in homes where it's always been about what you can't do, and don't get to experience as much the joy. Like when I think of certain times when I reflect back in my childhood. So we had this, this was when I was about 12 years old, 12, 13, 14. There was this family that lived across the street from us. Their name was Porter, Mr. and Mrs. Porter. And we used to go there on Friday nights after dinner. It just started at one point that we went over a couple of times, and then it became a regular thing. After dinner on Friday night, we'd go to the Porters, and there would be like tea and cake, and they would sing Zmiros. They would wait for us, and they'd go through all the Zmiros that they sang. They were like a simple couple. They were not a particularly learned couple. He was very much like he was in the junk business. And I mean, they came over from Europe. And so when he started in the junk business, it was like with a truck, finding junk and then bringing it somewhere. But somehow they were royal at the Friday night dinner, and they were such deeply beautiful people, and their children were just wonderful, are wonderful people. But anyways, those memories of that, like being with them and having tea in a glass, and Mr. Porter would put a sugar cube in his mouth, in his teeth, and drink his tea that way. But they went through every one of the Zmiros, and it was the first time that I really had seen that, a family where Zmiros were so important part of their Friday night. And but the warmth of the evening, and the fact that I was there with my family and their family. So these are like a deep part of my experience of Shabbos. The funny thing is, I would try to sing those Zmiros with my kids, and they don't sing any of those tunes. And they thought it was the funniest thing in the world that I would try to get them to sing those tunes. To Mr. and Mrs. Porter, there was no other tune. There's one tune for a zemer. Each one has its tune. The notion that you could have different tunes for it would be so bizarre and strange to them. And so every once in a while, I just want to sing a tune because it would transport me, back to that moment. My kids would just laugh. They have patience for like half of it, or maybe mostly they're making fun of me while it's happening. But even
Well,
that's
then you should come here and sing with David, because he sings the ones his grandfather sang, the same
and they're
melody.
probably the same ones.
Oh,
The same
yes.
tunes
for
from
sure.
them. Right. So, but that became part of my memory with my kids, them, because it was also good natured making fun of me while it was going on. And that, that also became, and also attempting, like I tried on a Friday night for us to eat silently. I asked them if we could try doing that, like meditatively. Could we eat silently? They were teenagers at the time. And that was not going to happen. There was no way they're going to allow that to happen. So we got to the first 2 minutes, just while we're eating the challah, we're going to sit silently. And so they agreed to do that. But after like 15 seconds, there was kicking under the table and all sorts of disturbance. So even the attempting to infuse it had its own character as it moved forward. And those are also some of the special memories. But there was a period of time where I was teaching at Or Sameach, but I was also the dorm. My Tzipi and I were like the dorm parents. So we actually lived on campus. And so Friday night dinner, we would eat with the boys. And so my oldest kids were like 9 and 8 years old. So, and we did that for about 2 years. And then, so now fast forward to we're in Northbrook. So a couple of years ago, my son, this was as COVID was ending, my son Sruli started to make these kiddishes in his backyard, and they were extremely delicious. And the guys who started coming just immediately sort of fell in love with these kiddishes, and they asked him to bring it to the shul. Once kiddishes started in shul again, they want him to be the one cooking it. For several months, he made every kiddush. Now he does like one kiddush a month. And so he was, starting to cook in shul, and he had this idea, which he brought to me, which was, let's do Friday night dinners in shul for the people that don't have a place to go on Friday nights. So now for the past 3 years, we've had almost every Friday night dinner in shul. Like a table is set up in the back of shul, and whoever wants to stay stays. And we've got some regulars and some people that come. But his family and Tzipi and I eat there on Friday nights. And he told me at one point, after this was going on for a while, that he wanted his kids to have the experience he had when we were at Or Sameach. Like they became part of his, Shabbos experience in a way that he wanted to sort of recreate it. And so now his kids have their own version of it. And obviously none of them, not one of those meals at any point, if you're experiencing that meal, does it look like what you exactly remember. Obviously you remember through rose-colored glasses. But so what is the substance of that? What is it? How would you talk about that? How would you identify that? How would you give it parameters? How would you recreate it? So because of that, that stuff doesn't get spoken of. The stuff that gets spoken of is the laws of cooking. You're not allowed to cook. What constitutes cooking? Or separating things or stuff. Yeah, so that's the misdirection of Shabbos. Also, just as to reiterate something which I've mentioned before, is that Torah can, for the most part, be simple. In other words, it doesn't have to be complicated for the most part. Torah, even halachic observance, for the most part, it does not need to be complicated. When it gets complicated, it's usually a choice we're making. There's nothing wrong with complicated. Sometimes complexity is beauty, and beauty is important. But it is a choice. So, for instance, you could design your Shabbos meal so that there's very little that you need to know halachically. There's a woman in who was in a building when Tzipi and I first got married in Bayit Vagan. Her name was Mrs. Lipo, and she was she and her husband were French, but they lived in Israel for a long time. And she used to prepare her Shabbos lunch, the Shabbos lunch. She used to prepare that Shabbos lunch in about an hour and a half on Fridays. Their Shabbos lunch involved a bunch of salads, some deli kind of thing. It's all prepared before Shabbos. Every bit of it was prepared before Shabbos. She did not have to do anything, maybe add salad dressing or something at the table, but all the salads were made before Shabbos. All the meat and all the other stuff that was prepared before Shabbos, and she had that. The one complexity is cholent, and cholent is complexity that the rabbi sort of encouraged, and that is you're going to have something hot at your meal. That is part of Oneg Shabbos, and it also shows you're not a Karaite. So that's the one complexity. The same thing could happen for Friday night dinner. Everything could be prepared beforehand. We like to have warm things, and having warm things creates complexity, but that's a choice. That's a choice. When we decide to add those elements to our meal that add complexity, but a person could design it so that there's hardly any of the complex law required. And it as a rule of thumb, whenever there's complexity, it's because you're getting close to doing something wrong. You might do it by choice, like having warm food. It's getting very close to cooking or lighting a fire, but it's a smart choice. So you make that choice, but that's the reason it got complex. And the same kind of thing with business ethics. Where it gets complex is where you're getting close to doing something wrong. You're not doing something wrong, but you're getting close to doing something wrong. So if, for instance, you decide you're not leaving any money on the table, so then it could be there's a lot of complexity. If you decide, for instance, that you're going to run your life that whenever it gets into a gray area, you're just not going there, and you're willing to leave money on the table in order to keep things simple, you don't have to know a lot of laws. Don't take something that belongs to somebody else. Is this his? Is this mine? That's where you start to get into complexity. And if you're willing to leave money on the table and say you're not going to get involved in gray areas, then you don't have to know a lot about business ethics. Almost any area of law that's complex, it's because I'm choosing the complexity. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm just bringing that up as long as we were talking about the other things. Okay. So that is that he prohibited us from believing in a God besides him. And that is his may be exalted, saying, you shall have no other gods before me. It has already been explained in the Gemara, Makos, that this negative commandment is included in the 613 commandments. And that is, they're saying there were 613 commandments stated to Moshe at Sinai, as we explained about the first positive commandment Sefer HaMitzvot, positive commandments. So he, in the Torah, in the 10 statements, the commandment, you shall have no other God before me, he is saying that that's the first negative commandment. It was spoken at Sinai. One example of people that believe they are monotheists and believe that they are very much want to be in line with the 10 statements are Christians, many of whom feel that the 10 commandments need to be posted everywhere in schools and in courtrooms. And yet our opinion is that they violate this commandment when they attribute special separate powers to Satan. When they say that Satan has power unencumbered by God and that he can function in a realm that God does not function, we understand that to mean that Satan is a god besides God, because if he can function without God's control and to the point where they'll say like he's involved in evil that happens and God is not. I just happened to be listening to an interview show on WBEZ, and a Catholic priest was speaking, and they were talking about why God allows bad things to happen to good people. And he said, well, Christian doctrine, as a Catholic priest, I would say that in Christian doctrine, this is not a question because God doesn't do the bad. Satan does the bad. Now, we would consider that a violation of this, and it was one of the 10 commandments. In fact, there are some people who read this as the first of the 10 commandments. So those who are so insistent upon the 10 commandments being the foundation of morality for American culture would be in violation of the first of those by believing that Satan has separate power that and a realm in which he functions and God does not. That would be belief in a God besides him and be a violation of what many would argue. The Rambam himself does not say this is the first of the mitzvahs, this is the first of the negative commandments. The first of the mitzvahs is in the first phrase, which I'm the Lord your God, which he says is a mitzvah to know God. So he would say that the line earlier is the first mitzvah. But it's even according to him, it's the first of the negative commandments. And there are many others who read that first line as just a preamble and that this is really the first of the mitzvahs. Okie dokie. I look forward to learning with you guys tomorrow. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to learn with you.